Hi all, my name's Donna Beveridge. I'm a trainer and assessor with Wesley Vocational Institute, and we've just got a few videos that we are making available to our learners just to help support you to complete some of the assessments that we will be asking you to do throughout your program. So today's session, we're just going to have a look at the Skills Development and Observation Report, one of those assessment tools that we're using. So depending on your program, depends on which tools you use. So for you, this is, if you've been provided with this recording, you should be required to participate in completing these reports. So, commonly known as the SDOR, referred to, abbreviated by your trainer as the SDOR. This tool is designed as an assessment to accompany the knowledge portion of what you do, and it may be used within both the workplace and a simulated environment. So if you are employed as you are going through the program, the SDOR is using those workplace examples that align to the actual unit that you would be completing. It's about those real interactions that you have with clients, with colleagues, and conducting the work that you would normally do. In the simulated setting, that would be either classroom-based, or it may be Teams, Zoom sessions that you're doing with your trainer and peer learners. And what we're doing is simulating that environment to replicate the workplace, the client contacts, the client interactions that you might be required to undertake in whatever qualification and community context you might be working in. So we need to have realistic scenarios, and there are tools that we use to set up those scenarios for that assessment. The objectives with this assessment is so that we can evaluate your work processes, your ability to work with clients, to work with documentation, to work with equipment, those things that make us assured as a trainer that if you were working with a client in a workplace, that you would be able to undertake the tasks required, that that unit qualification deems sufficient for competency in that unit. So the SDOR is structured in sections, and I will, once we've gone through the PowerPoint and some commentary, I will change the screen and we'll have a look at the SDOR template as is. So part A is what the assessor is observing. It's that direct observation of the tasks that you are undertaking, so that we can make comments and assess whether you are competent in either the workplace or in those simulated workplace scenarios that you are undertaking. So we have a number of tasks that we would be asking you to complete, or we would be observing in the workplace, and we would be assessing whether they meet the requirements for that unit, if they're sufficient for the unit requirements, and we would make an assessment of your performance of competency in that scenario. Part B is your section. It's your workplace activities. So there is a template, actions that you need to address. So again, when we look at the template itself, I will demonstrate what's required in this section, but basically you have to give specific detailed examples of how you worked with somebody or how you completed a task. You would need to provide some details like the date, the client, the activity or the task that you were undertaking, and then you're giving a reflective example, a response to what you actually did. Part C is supporting evidence. So this is the section that generally the trainer will complete for you, but we will be asking you potentially for examples of specific tasks completed. It might be that there are accompanying videos with a recording. It might be workplace documentation that we are required to have an example of to demonstrate your competency in a task or a skill. It could be the logbook hours that you might be required to complete for that specific unit. So depending on what unit it is, what qualification, certificate or diploma you're completing, each unit will require different supporting evidence, and you will be advised by the trainer specifically what that evidence would need to be. So we'll just have a little bit more of a look. So in part A, it's that direct observation. So we are looking at your work either directly, we're on work placement with you and we're observing you completing tasks, or we are in the classroom or online classroom and we're observing a simulation where you're interacting with another peer learner or someone else, and you're having a client consultation of a scenario. It might be a simulation of a work health and safety room inspection. So we're observing what you have done, the tasks that you have completed, and it needs to provide that sufficient evidence, valid evidence, recent evidence, reliable, repeatable evidence for us to say that we deem you competent. So we'll look at work health and safety as our SDOR, and so that's why it's sort of directing some of the criteria around hazard identification and incident reporting. So the idea is that, you know, for this specific unit, this is what we need to be looking at, the types of tasks that we need to be looking at. And the documentation and evidence would be, in this instance, you need an incident report, you need a risk assessment completed. And that document forms part of the observation. Can you fill out this form satisfactorily? Is it sufficient for the workplace to meet that evidence requirements? So when we're looking at part B and C, part B is about your descriptions. It's the detail of the tasks that you've undertaken, where it was set, like, you know, was it scenario based or was it in the workplace? And it does need to be validated by supervisors, and there is that section where we need to get supervisor or buddy sign off. They're not signing off that you're competent in this task or in the unit. They're signing off that you participated in this work in the workplace or on work placement. So we quite often get supervisors or colleagues concerned that they're signing off on something and they haven't observed you, or they're worried that they're signing off on a competency. That's not what it is. It's just acknowledging that you were in the workplace, that you had this work context that applies or is aligned with the unit that you're undertaking. And so with all of those sections, that's our framework for evaluation. That's our assessment of the performance that you've undertaken and the requirements that need to be met so that we can overall say that you're competent in a unit. So we will look at the SDOR. Remember, all the sections need to be completed. So the front cover has spaces for dates, for names, ticking where the actual tasks were undertaken. So just remember to really have a good look at your document, whether you do it hard copy paper or whether you do it electronically, just making sure that all the sections are completed before you submit. You've got the contents page, then you've got a number of pages of instructions for you to understand how that assessment should be conducted. And you need to make sure, like I mentioned, there are sections for you to put your name throughout the document. You might have to put dates throughout the document. There are places for signatures. So please do not submit them until you have reviewed and made sure that all the sections have been completed. I will go through this, just talking about where the unit code and name is and the performance criteria, the requirements, what the sections look like. So we'll have a quick look at that. And there's sections for me as, or the trainer assessor as an observer, as well as a sign off for your supervisors. So the other thing to remember also is if you are unsure, your trainer, you just need to put your trainer's name at wesleymission.org.au, not .com.au. And you also have the opportunity to put through Wesley Training the group email box, and then that will be sent to your trainer. So just, wherever you have any concerns, please don't hesitate to contact your trainer and have that discussion. All right, so what we will do now is have a quick look at the SDOR itself, and I'll just go through that with you. So let's just get to the front page. Okay, so as I mentioned, SDOR, you'll very frequently hear us as trainers use the abbreviation, something we try and talk to you about not doing with clients and just using jargon, and we do it too. Just to explain how it is set out and what it looks like and the sections to complete. So you have your unit code, so HLT WHS 002. Again, something that as trainers we do, we will often refer to the code instead of giving you the full name of the unit. Pull us up, we do that if you don't understand. The actual last 3 digits are very common across a whole range of different units. So it will confuse us and yourself if you only just refer to the last 3 digits. Much better if you're just using the code to use the whole code so you know which unit we are actually talking about. When you are completing the SDOR and submitting it, the date should be entered here. You should mark off whether you are in your existing workplace, whether you are in a work placement, so for 40 hours or 120 hours or 100 hours for a diploma, or whether this is completed in a simulated environment over online or face-to-face using our scenarios. Your name, where you are working or your work placement organisation, the person who is actually working with you, that is a supervisor or who is responsible for you for being in the workplace or work placement, and then your trainer assessor name. So just be very mindful that we need this data filled out before submission. So we have our contents page, and then as I mentioned, we have our instructions. This provides a bit of a breakdown about how this assessment occurs, where it's occurring, what's required to make it a valid tool for us to use, and a breakdown of the part A, B, and C. So we do have, this is not your sole source of evidence for both assessment questions and performance tasks. There are a variety of assessment requirements that need to be met as you're completing your program. Some of the evidence may be used in Part C in multiple units. They apply to multiple performance requirements in units. So that's why Part C is mostly left to the trainer to tell you what you need to provide or what tasks you need to complete to be able to make sure that this document has all of the evidence that we require. So just breaking down the next section, again, this is the unit, HLT WHS 002, follow safe work practices for direct client care. This unit, I've chosen the template for this one because this unit is in a large number of courses that we run. And so most people would be required to complete this specific unit. So performance criteria, this is found in the unit's information, the training package from training.gov. This basically tells us as trainers and you as a learner what you should be able to do at the completion of this unit. This is the expectation of how you should be able to complete tasks and in the workplace. So follow safe practices for direct client care, and then it breaks down the points themselves. So you should be able to follow workplace policy and procedure. You should be able to minimise risk. You should be able to report incidents. So there's an expectation that at the end of the unit, these are the things that you will be able to do. You might still need some support as you do it. It may be unfamiliar in the workplace, but you have that knowledge and practice through simulations and scenarios. So for this unit, there are 4. Each unit may have different number of performance criteria that it has documented for you to be able to meet those requirements. Then 5. Then the next section is the performance evidence. So this is the doing, the performance, the specific tasks that we are observing that you can do. So again, each unit will have some information in this section around what we as a trainer need to see or ask you to complete, or the evidence you need to provide to demonstrate that you can complete these tasks. And so you can see here, contributed to a workplace work health and safety meeting or an inspection. So if you're in the workplace in organisation already, you would definitely be part of work health and safety aspects of your organisation. There should be work health and safety meetings, there should be work health and safety information, there would be risk in assessments on tasks or on chemicals or on facilities or the environment. So if you are at work, there is information there that you may be able to provide as evidence so that you can show us this is what you've been able to do. At the same time, the trainer may provide you with some scenarios or from some tasks to complete, and say might give you a work health and safety room inspection where you have to go around and identify the room, whether there's any hazards, identify whether there's a risk, assess the risk. So that's an easy task that we can give you. Even if you do have evidence from the workplace, we can do both. That you've conducted that risk assessment and that you record the results. So in that case, we actually need documented evidence that you have done a workplace risk assessment of some type, and that documented, completed document is provided to us. Could be an in-class activity, it could be a work activity, but that task will be given to you by your trainer. That you consistently apply safety procedures in the day-to-day work activity, and you have to think about infection control, manual handling, PPE, reporting of incidents. So there are some examples that you have to discuss working or on work placement. How did you do this in the normal processes of your work? And that's a reflection. So there's no specific document that goes with that, but it is a reflective discussion. Reporting incidents, that's an easy one again. If you're in a workplace that does have incident forms that you might have previously completed, you can give us a completed document of evidence, or we could do a simulated incident and get you to do that documentation, and then there's our evidence that you've done a report for a specific incident. The last one for work health and safety is followed workplace procedures for at least one simulated emergency situation. And again, depending on your workplace, if you've got evidence that you have a fire and safety evacuation training module and you do simulated emergencies, if you can give us the evidence that you've participated in that, then we don't have to do a simulation. But if you don't have a workplace, if you're on work placement, doing the small hours, you don't get to participate in anything like that, then in the classroom setting, we will set up a simulated emergency and we will have a scenario that you have to undertake. So we need to see something, we need evidence of it, and that gives us that comprehensive ability to assess performance. That's what the train.gov says we need to see for this one unit. So the next section is part A. So I mentioned that you need to have your name throughout this document. So you can see you'll need to populate it there. Part A will be documented by the trainer once the scenario activities or the documents, the evidence comes in and we're making an assessment of it. So we're documenting what we've observed in the activities and tasks completed, and then we're giving a summary feedback of what we observed and how it met the competency, the performance requirements, the dates we require, and whether it was satisfactory or not satisfactory. Typically, we would redo simulations and scenarios if they're not satisfactory so that we can get you to a point where you are demonstrating satisfactory performance. Part B, your section, again, your name. Now, we need to make sure that you've selected whether it was simulation or if it was workplace, and put the dates there that this occurred. The trainer may also add additional dates to that after doing simulation or looking at workplace observations. So what you notice in the left-hand column, what we call PE1, so if you go back up to the performance criteria, so the performance evidence 1, describe how you contributed to a workplace meeting or inspection. So you're going to give a date. If there's a client, you're going to give some de-identified initials, something like that, and the activity that you performed. So say you're working in a community outreach position, support worker, something like that. You might do an inspection of an environment that you take your client to. So tell me about the client, what's the issue, and that you completed an environmental inspection and whether you made any adjustments to that. It doesn't have to be a massive long spiel for something that has a specific document attached, just an indication of what you were doing, why you were doing it. And PE2, describe how you conducted a workplace risk assessment and recorded the results. So the document with the results you will have attached, or like you will provide to your trainer. So again, here it just needs to be like a brief, where did you do this? What was the situation surrounding it? Was it simulation? Was it in the workplace? And what were the actions that needed to come out of it? And briefly, it might just be reported to supervisor, require remedial maintenance for something. So just brief, because we've got the document that goes with it. This is the section that you have to have that reflective explanation for this unit. Describe how you consistently applied workplace safety procedures in the day-to-day work activities required by your role. So again, date, client, and the task. So if you're a support worker, you might have had personal care for a client before you take them out to an appointment. So when you look at infection control, we're looking at ensuring that you monitor if someone's unwell, or if you're unwell, that you don't continue to work with them. Hazardous manual tasks, it might be that you need to tell us about whether there's a lifter involved, or how you protect your back or the client mobility. PPE, if you're doing personal care, that you complete hand hygiene, that you use gloves, that the waste and linen is disposed of appropriately, and reporting incidents. If just a brief section there, because if we have the documented evidence, you could write incident form completed for this occasion or for the scenario, or whatever that incident might have been that we used for that incident form. So it's applying that information from either the workplace or from your scenario to reflect on how you work on a daily basis. So wherever there are dot points, when you're writing your reflection, try and include those dot points in how you worked with that specific client or for that specific task. And then PE4, describe how you followed workplace procedures for at least one simulated emergency. Again, this could be in the workplace, completed education module, here's my certificate, participated in regular fire evacuation simulations. Now for that, it may be that you just need an email from your supervisor confirming that you've participated in the most recent simulation. If there's any evidence, a sign-on sheet for a simulation, something like that you have in the workplace, various ways of capturing the data. But when you start the course, if this unit is one of the units that you're doing and you're working, absolutely try and think about how can I get evidence of things that I do at work, even if it's just an email acknowledgement from your supervisor that you participated in an activity. If you don't have that opportunity at work or through work placement, then your trainer will provide you with a simulation scenario and an activity to discuss. The next section is your observer. This is actually in workplace. So if in workplace, it could be a colleague, it could be a buddy, it could be a supervisor. As I said, they're not signing that you're competent. They don't need to read all of the information that you've provided. They can. They might like to know, what they're signing off and the information, how it aligns to that unit. But they're acknowledging that while you were doing this unit, you were on work placement or you were employed with the organisation. If you can get 3, fantastic. Sometimes it's a challenge, and just getting 1 can be a little bit of a hard ask. And for however many units you might have, if you're using SDORs, there's 1 for each unit. So it is about making sure that you have the ability to get that sign-off. Don't overload one person with signatures right at the end with all these documents. It should be something that is an ongoing thing. And then the trainer assessor will sign off. So they will document the information that they have either observed the simulation or observed you in the workplace and what you have been doing. Just going back to the observer details, just try and make sure that they complete all of the information. And if they don't, can you please add dates, titles? At most, if all they do is put the signature, can you please add the rest for your trainer? And then, as I mentioned, the supporting evidence, typically the trainer will document. So for this unit, there would be additional evidence of a work health and safety inspection, an incident report, an evacuation education certificate module if you were at work, and that's probably it, the 3. So this one will have some supporting documentation to go with it. And then name, the date that you submit. The trainer is going to provide some feedback for you. They're going to mark it as satisfactory, or if it's not yet satisfactory, usually we hold on to it and we repeat the activities until we can deem it satisfactory. And your name, your signature. The date is when you have completed. So typically we would leave that blank until you can see the feedback. Your trainer will give you that information. We're signing off, and then this information is saved. There are various ways that it's saved and sent to trainers. Your specific course, your trainer will tell you how that will occur, whether it's an upload into the lineage management system, whether it's a hard copy and hand provided, whether it's emailed, electronic, whole range of ways that this might work. And you just need to confirm with your trainer how that's going to occur. So if you have any questions, hopefully that's sort of helped a little bit about, you know, what this document is and what we're looking at and what we need. And as we go through the program, it will be easier for you to understand some of the requirements. But when you first start, it can be very overwhelming. Please don't hesitate to contact your trainer and have a conversation, ask about how to fill out those forms. Thank you.